Okay, so is there anyone for public comment? Just go ahead and unmute yourself if I can't see you. Okay, I'm assuming not, so I'm going to move up to update on ventilation survey. I was not at the board meeting last week. I had a conflict, so if there is something that I missed and you guys really feel like I need to know it, please feel free to let me know. Hi, Tyler.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen and we'll just go through school by school and the details on that. All right, so as everybody knows, the State Department of Ed's guidelines recommend that school systems understand their ventilation systems. They don't actually tell you that they expect you to do the repairs, but they want you to be aware of how your ventilation system is functioning and how to maximize its efficiency. So we did that. We brought in Colliers. They were on site on the August 19th, 25th, 26th, and September 1st. All the school's ventilation systems have been completed. It's going to cost the district about 15 grand. They are in the process of getting us a formal written report, but after each inspection at each building, they gave us an informal summary of the things that they found and of the recommendations they made, so that we were trying to maximize, the ventilation in each of our spaces. So we then just went through, I made a bulleted list of each school and the things that have come up. We know Natchog School's our oldest, and they have Dawn jump in anytime. They have 10 motors that have to be replaced in their energy recovery ventilation units, the EVRs. I'm learning something new every day. I guess we've installed one, and then we ordered the other 9, and they're back ordered. And Dawn, jump in if you have details to share.
Okay, yep. So the update on the other 10 motors, with the tracking system, it's noted that they should arrive at the Granite Group. That's the company that we had purchased the motors from. They should arrive tomorrow sometime, depending on when they arrive there. If they're, they come in at a decent hour tomorrow, then I have a couple of guys who will drive down to, I think they're in Plainfield. They'll go and they'll pick them up. And then worst case scenario, Tuesday, they have to drive down on Tuesday and pick them up. We'll pick them all up and we'll start to install them. Well, it does say that it takes about 2 hours to install each one. We, just as a side note, we knew about these motors even way before COVID happened. The problem was the motors are so old that nobody makes them anymore. So we had found one. We purchased it through, I think it was Granger. Unfortunately, it didn't fit, so we had to send that back. And then my guys were just trying to hunt them down where to find one that would fit and work. And that's when we found, Granite Group, and then the process started of testing one out, and then we found out they worked. So that's kind of the background on those motors at Natchog.
All right, and then the other stuff at Natchog, the exhaust issues that Colliers found, they've already been fixed. And Natchog does have the beauty of having very large operable windows, which of course everyone understands ventilation is improved if your windows are open, right? So it's a good thing that they have big windows that they can open. They also told us that we don't have to run the EVR units, which tend to be kind of noisy. We don't have to run them at full capacity. When the rooms are not filled to capacity, which is how our whole hybrid model is working. So we know that we can keep them on the low side so the noise is kind of dull. We do understand that once we go back fully in person, assuming that happens on the 14th, like we're planning, that we have to figure out what to do, because it's difficult to hear on your computer at home with the buzzing, with the humming in the background of those units. So that's something we have to address. Moving on to Windham High School, the classroom unit ventilators are functioning as designed. The air handling units are operational. I guess the air dampers need to be opened and or repaired. I don't know, Dawn, if you want to talk about that.
We have to go through each damper and figure out why they're not opening. That is a little tedious and time consuming. It's a little harder to fix those. Just a reminder that my 2 guys who work on HVAC, Ryan and Mark, they are not HVAC licensed, but they've been informally trained, I guess we could say, with the HVAC company. So they are knowledgeable, but again, their knowledge is limited. So some of the repairs may require, outsourcing, or at least help with an outsourced company.
So the exhaust fans in Windham High School are not working, which is why we made a purchase of all the box fans. Colliers' recommendations were any places where you had exhaust fans that were not working properly, you create your own exhaust fans by adding a standalone fan in front of an open window and have it set to exhaust only. So we've done that in all the locations across the district to make sure that we're creating our own exhaust fans. The isolation room at the high school does not have an exhaust fan, but we're going to put a portable one in there. The hallway ventilation, Colliers said it's obviously an old building, which is why we're renovating it, but the hallways themselves were not set up to be ventilated well. So they suggest opening any windows that might add air in their hallways. And we're actually today, John, this last bullet came up because the high school leadership team was asking about whether or not the locker rooms could be used. And we were going to check into whether or not we had the motors to replace on the exhaust fans for the locker rooms. Do you have an update on that?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. So, I touched base with Ryan, this afternoon before I left, and, basically he was working on the B wing, which is the classroom, and that took more time than he anticipated. He said it was just a big mess up there. He said the units aren't getting any power. All the motors are all original. So you're talking what, like 45 years plus motors. So he was getting all information off of those. And when I left, he was staying over to take a look at the was it C wing, the gym wing? I think that's C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He did say some are working, but he's not sure which ones are. So he was, again, looking at it tonight, and he'll let me know tomorrow
Okay. Thank you.
which ones are working and which ones are not.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What about rooms like the nurse's office that doesn't have any windows at
That's a good question. Don, can you answer that?
I believe they got,
An exhaust, right?
I think there are some HEPA filters that I think Ryan said he saw 4 that we have to hang up, attached to the wall.
Okay, can you check on that and get back to us in an email?
Yep, I could get a definite answer on that.
Tracy, a concern is about the not having the windows to be able to add a fan, or?
Right, yeah, like in the nurse's office, and I'm sure there are other spaces in the building, but the nurse's office, there's no windows at all. That was one of the requests they made to the high school renovation committee, was to give them a space with some windows for some natural light, because they have none at all in that corner by the elevator.
That's central office. We don't have a single window. It's like a jail cell.
Right.
Yeah, get it. I
You don't have
understand.
as much traffic flowing through and potentially sick kids as the nurse's office would.
Agreed. All right, Windham Middle School, classroom exhaust fans are working. Colliers confirmed what we already knew, and that is that we have issues with the digital controls, but the system can be worked manually, so we know it's operating. 3 of the restrooms on the first floor have exhaust fan issues, but the facilities gentlemen believe they can address those, or have already done that. I'm not really sure. Don will have to fill me in. They need to manually open up the dampers because the control system is not working. There's repairs already scheduled. They may actually be finished. It looks like September 1st to the 3rd, we had already had a company contracted to do the work on the VAVs. And we've just obviously told the Windham Middle School, any of the buildings can open windows to increase airflow. They had some concerns about the heat on the second floor, so we just encouraged them to keep the windows open, and it doesn't look like it's going to get too hot, fingers crossed, during the month of September, so we're hoping that that's where we are. North Windham, the dampers are functioning properly. They have all operable windows in each of the rooms except for one. I don't know, Dawn, was that repaired yet?
I don't believe it was yet. Randy was working on the way the fans were put in the window, the picture that you had sent me. Obviously that wouldn't do anything. So Randy went over there and made a shelf where the fan could sit on top to get the proper exhaust going. But I will touch base with him tomorrow to send him out there to look at that.
Okay, Thank you. We, there are 8 classrooms in that building that did not have working exhaust fans, so we bought portable fans for those rooms and dropped them off, and like she's just talking about, installed them, not really installed, right? Just sort of putting them near an open window and making sure they're blowing out.
Correct.
Windham Center School, none of the classroom exhaust fans are working, so each of their classrooms needed to have a portable fan installed near an open window. Luckily, they have operable windows, so that's where we are with that. Sweeney School, all the ventilation is working properly. There were 2 restroom exhausts that needed to be repaired that I know facilities either has done or will do. And they again have operable windows to increase airflow. CH Barrels, all the exhaust fans are working. They also, Colliers confirmed what we already knew about that building, and that is there are some control issues and the system has to be turned on and off manually. There are some AC issues we were already aware of in the cafeteria and some of the rooms around the art room. And I think we have someone already working to get those repaired or scheduled to get those repaired. So in looking at all the things that we know that need to be addressed, Dawn had, or one of her maintenance gentlemen talked to someone from BT Lindsay and Company, and you'll see in my bullets, I'm not sure how the whole bidding process has to work and if we're allowed to just accept a proposal like this, but they have proposed for approximately $30,000 to give us 30 days with a certified service technician. And then this person would follow our maintenance guys around who are, highly skilled, but not necessarily certified. And they would help us to go through and make the repairs. Obviously, the $30,000 is just to have access to their service technician. It's not to actually pay for the parts and the things that need to be fixed. And Dawn's working on getting quotes for all those based on the informal notes we received from Colliers. We really would like to see all the repairs completed before it gets cold. For obvious reasons, if we're using box fans to offer the exhaust systems, the exhaust in each of our classrooms, if it's 10 degrees out, they're not going to want to keep their windows open and exhaust fans running. So we have to have, something in place by then. So at least for the school planning and design committee to think about is how we go about making this all work in as cost-effective manner as possible, because it's going to be costly. It's going to cost the district money that we didn't budget for. There's kind of no way around that.
Have we looked
So
at?
I'd just like to add, so
Okay. Go ahead, Tracy. You're the expert.
I have a question.
Let Dawn explain first, and then we'll take the questions.
So I'm just adjusting my volume. So I was just going to say with the certified service technician, BT Lindsay, they've been, working on our units when we need their expertise for a long time. Because I know the process is generally at that dollar figure, we would have to go out to bid. But I would strongly suggest to stay with BT Lindsay, because once again, they know our schools, they know what we have, they just have a history. And sometimes when I've worked with, not in this job, but at other places I've been, I've worked with other HVAC companies, and there's a lot out there that they may be cheaper, but they're not even worth the cheap price.
Well taken.
And that's again, and that's my, that's my opinion, just being around in the industry.
Had a question?
Oh, yes. Is that theory school days or calendar days? That's my question, and I have a comment after that.
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't know the answer to that. Dawn, do you?
I am not 100% sure, but I would say it would be, like working days, Monday through Friday.
Okay, yeah, because if not, we have to pay extra for people to come on Saturdays and Sundays.
That's a good point.
Right. Yeah, I would, like I said, I would say I'm probably like, let's say 98% sure that it would be Monday to Friday.
And in terms of the bidding process, since we approved that our superintendent takes emergency decisions in cooperation with other people, I suppose this falls under it.
Like a waiver.
It would make it easier.
That is one of the things I was going to point out that we do, because we really are trying to fix something in response to making sure our buildings, the airflow is working properly in our buildings, because we don't want to play with it during the pandemic. I think that this is one of those examples where we could bypass the process for an emergency like this. Any other thoughts on that, Tracy?
Do we have a board meeting next week or just the one tonight?
Just the special board meeting tonight.
Okay, so we can't add anything tonight. So the next regular board meeting, if we need to move sooner than that, we can ask Linda to call a special one.
Correct.
But our policy, I believe, says $30,000 and up, which is why when we had gotten some services in the fall, they had to stay under 29,000. There's no reason we can't suspend our policy for an emergency cause like this, but we need to take action as a board before we do that and just authorize you to spend it. Otherwise, we're in violation of our own policies.
Well, last week at the last board meeting, they actually approved the ability for me to make decisions in an emergency setting. If we
Okay.
determine that this was indeed one of those emergencies, they've already given me that power.
Okay.
And it was a recommendation from our attorneys, because there's so many insane things that are happening as a result of COVID, and you can't have that many board meetings. So
Okay.
if you all, the board members who are on tonight, believe that this is enough of an emergency, then we can go that route.
Yeah, we can make that recommendation to the board and just go that route. I don't have a problem with it. Katina, do you have a problem with it?
Not at all. And I know Mary Galushi's on the line and she had a question.
All right, Paula, do you have a problem with it? Okay, Mary, I know you wanted to speak, but do you have a problem with doing that under the emergency blanket we gave Tracy last week?
I didn't hear all of that. Were you asking me something?
Yes, the last board meeting, I wasn't at last week, I had a conflict, but the board gave Tracy permission to make emergency repairs and contracts as needed. Are you okay with this $30,000 contract falling under that?
Yes, and I had a question sort of relevant, but you could, if you're polling us, you can continue, I guess.
Oh, you were the last one. I was waiting that way. You could continue to speak if you wanted to. You're the last board member. There's me, Paula, you, and Tina on here.
Oh, okay, thank you. Now, I just wanted to ask if we have ever had a certified service technician on staff, and is this something we have had to neglect, due to our incredibly bad budgets over decades. And, I do think we need to make sure that, I think Tyler is on this meeting, and, it's very important that the years of neglect, which I have continued this year, be highlighted. And I mean, I'm very impressed by the work of the maintenance staff and the facilities. I mean, absolutely, you're doing heroic work during this time. But I mean, do we need this position? Is it something we've had in the past? Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. I really would have to do some research to find that out. I don't know the answer. I don't know if Dawn does. She's relatively new in her role as well, but if she doesn't know, we could find out.
We used a certified HVAC, a certified electrician, and a certified plumber, but we were unable to continue paying their stipends in their contract for keeping their licenses up. So we dropped that. And I think likewise the employees who, I think most of them are no longer here. I haven't seen a current list of names of employees, but I think most of them have either retired or left the district. They did not keep up their contractor's licenses, their HVAC, their plumbing, and their carpentry licenses to be able to do those things. So I don't think we have anybody on staff right now, but Dawn can correct me because I'm not exactly sure on everybody who's currently on staff.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's nobody currently is licensed, and I know Rory at one time was, but I think I went on the state to just check it out, and I believe it expired. I also municipalities, technically I believe you don't need a licensed employee to do this. However, I think I heard some talk that they want to change that down the road. But again, I could only guess that we probably didn't have a licensed HVAC in the system. I could be wrong. I don't know the full history, but I really don't think. But I know it's pretty common to, either have a licensed HVAC as an employee or have an outside company, a vendor who take care of all the PMs and repairs. I know I also know it's difficult to find an HVAC tech at the salary that's usually offered. Because I know other towns who try to get an HVAC technician, and they were offering probably more that we would ever offer, and they couldn't find anybody good.
Wow.
And that's why most districts, they go with a an outside contractor for PMing. I mean, that's something I could look at. I could always get quotes and just say, hey, this is a ballpark figure, so we know what we're looking at. Again, my guys, they're awesome, they're great, but they're also, they're capped. The knowledge is, and also the two companies that we do use, we're lucky because if my guys run into a problem, they'll call them up and say, hey, I have this problem, and they will try to, give them suggestions or walk them through at no charge. Because other companies would be like, either A, don't touch it, we're coming down there, or they'll charge for their telephone time to problem solving. But I think, I think Windham has to realize, we have to start taking care of our mechanical stuff properly, because this is what happens. We keep kicking the can down the road, and then when something big happens and it's absolutely necessary, we run into this problem, then we're left holding the bag. What do we do? And it costs more now to repair things rather than if we had, and what happened in the past, but if we maintain things, it's always cheaper to maintain rather than repairing and replace down the road.
Thanks, Dawn. All right, moving on. The board agenda asks for the spending to date in the facilities department related to COVID. So the inspection, as I mentioned earlier, cost about 15 grand. There's some HVAC costs that have already been incurred, almost $10,000 in the MERV 13 filters, which are the newest filters they're recommending in our ventilation systems. And then the school repairs that have already been done, or the parts that have already been ordered, are almost another 10 grand. Then there's a series of expenditures not related to HVAC that are coming out of the facilities budget. I know Dawn's panicked about her budget being basically annihilated at this point. But like some examples there would be the hand sanitizer stands, so that there's hand sanitizer in the classrooms that don't have sinks of their own. We know that washing your hands is far more effective than hand sanitizer, but if we don't have access to a sink, we want them to have access to the sanitizer. And then sanitizers and wipes, again, are costly. Tyler's on this particular call, and thank you very much for being here, Tyler, but I just want everyone to know that we did send up an email to you and Jim Rivers letting you know that we're pretty certain we're going to have some expenses that we're not budgeted for, and we're not going to have a choice but to make the repairs.
Paula, you had a question?
I do. Just very quickly, the town does not have a certified individual that we could borrow or utilize, and that's
That's a
my
great
question. And my comment is that, again, having been on the board for years, I know when it comes to capital expenses, that's usually the one thing that gets cut until we reach an emergency situation, and then we handle it. And we have to be much more proactive than that. Please, Tyler. Thank you.
Paul, I will definitely check with the town to see if they have a certified HVAC person on staff. I don't know if Tyler knows that off the top of his head, but I'll check.
Okay.
Hi, I don't know that, but I was certainly going to suggest that. And I know that prior to COVID, we had talked with the Board of Ed and the town about, about combining forces with the public works and at least sharing resources to the best of your ability. Obviously, with COVID happening, that got blown out of the water. There's all these different priorities. And back in July, Tracy, and I spoke to Lynn too, Board of Finance is more than willing to assist with whatever needs to be happening. And like I said, we'll have you come to a meeting in September, basically a special meeting dedicated to updating the Board of Finance on your costs, building and otherwise, for the school system. That way we're well informed and can provide assistance. The more we know now, the better off we are coming to year end, and when, obviously budgets are already no margins, let alone slim margins, no margins.
Right.
The more the Board of Finance is aware, sooner we can provide support and continue to. And I've said this to you and Lynn. I vowed that support. Again, this is unprecedented, beyond anyone's control. You know, a lot of these things, you're right. Capital budgets should be improved in those areas, but this is obviously unprecedented measures to be taken for COVID, and those are not things we can calculate in an operating budget. So certainly should not be taxing that budget. So we are prepared to help out any way we can. You know, I don't want to speak exactly to town finances until I get my update on the year end. But you know, COVID happening, we could be in a lot worse situation townwide. Bye, Katina. Take care. We could certainly be in a worse position townwide with COVID happening. So we have some prepared measures to help out everyone in town. So thank you for sharing this information. And certainly at the end of this month, like I said, I'm going to send out an invite for a special meeting to have you guys come and present us with an update so we can be prepared and able to help you folks out.
Appreciate
Bye,
that,
Susan.
Tyler. Thank you so much. All right, moving on in the agenda. The next, well, first of all, are there any other questions about the ventilation study or the expenditures for COVID before I move on to the next agenda item?
Oh, okay, go ahead.
You have a question?
No.
No, okay. All right, so the next part is just bringing you up to speed on our thinking around, I already let you know, Trace, but I'll just let the group know. We have really been bogged down with trying to reopen schools, so we haven't gone a whole lot further in our planning process around the elementary school consolidation. We have some information we're going to share with you tonight. On the screen is just the sort of the big picture things that we're thinking about, the considerations around why we think we can consolidate an elementary school or why we believe we need to. I'm going to have Neil walk you through a few slides about our student enrollment. And I think it'll show you from a mathematical standpoint why we really think we can fit the students we have into one less building. We obviously already, everyone in the call knows that we have continual budget constraints. So if we're able to reduce our operating budget by closing a building, that makes sense. We have to look into the age of the buildings, the size, the location. We are going to be analyzing the cost of running the facilities and repairing the equipment in those facilities. We obviously have to redistrict the entire district and understand how transportation will be impacted by that. We obviously it'll have a huge impact on staffing. Obviously it will reduce our staffing structure significantly, but it will also provide us with an opportunity to make sure that the elementary schools that are, that remain open will be fully staffed and have all of the supports they need to provide, a high quality education. And then we have to make sure that we communicate all of this to the people involved, because we know closing a school is, people have emotional responses to it. Everybody wants their neighborhood school to stay open. Schools create memories and they mean something to the people in a community. So we want to do a really good job of communicating this. So that's sort of our big picture thinking. I'm going to let Neil walk you through the next few slides because he's done some enrollment projections or some analysis that help us understand why we think we can make this decision. Are you on, Neil?
I'm ready to roll.
There you go.
Here we go. So these next three slides, what we did here is this these are just K-5 population snapshots. And how we derive these numbers, we used our internal information system. And the reason we did that, so if you were to go on EdSite, which are the official October 1st numbers, there might be slight differences. And the reason we included this is if there were specialized programs in EdSite, they count as different facilities and they don't show there. So we wanted to get the what we felt was the entirety of the building. And April Chapam was amazing. Usually her counts are within 1 to 2 students of the October count. So I feel pretty comfortable sharing these with you. So these numbers basically go on, just move this over here, excuse me. This was 2012-13. The reason I picked this was the year before Barrows opened, if my memory serves. You see no population there for K-5, by the way. And then you have North Windham, Natchug, Sweeney, and Windham Center. Those were the populations of those schools. And then you have the total of those schools down below. Then in 2015-16, we had 370 students that were at the time in the K-5 population. That's the first year Barrows was fully enrolled K-8, if my memory serves correctly. And I think it was the first year I was here, so I'm pretty certain of that. And then North Windham, Natchug, Sweeney, and Windham Center. Those were the populations of those schools. Obviously, they're smaller at that point, but part of that reason is those students were going to Barrows. Then this past year's October 1st numbers, and even though our overall population has been relatively flat, went down by 30 students pre-K to 12, you could see that we're now down in those 3 years about close to 100 students from 15-16 in our K-5 population. So that was the first setting of the context. So the next slide, so what I did here was just show Windham students, meaning Windham residents that come here. So in Barrows, what I did, how I got 247 and 248, just so everybody knows, that was a little bit of an estimate. I took the previous numbers, and I know that 2/3 of our students are Windham residents, so that's how I derived those numbers. It could be off by 1 to 2 students, but again, I'm very comfortable sharing those numbers with you right here. Then if you go back, you could see the numbers from 2012, 2003 as they were in the previous slide, but I took out, obviously, the out-of-district students, and what you could see here is a difference of 30 students in 15-16 of an increase, and then in 19-20, you see a little bit of a difference. And about 70 students, which isn't horrible, from 2012-13. But now and so sometimes when we hear, why do we need to close the school, it's the next slide that kind of delivers it home, or kind of convinced me. So I don't know if it'll convince you too, or make an argument why this could be a feasible thing or a reasonable thing from a numbers standpoint, not necessarily other perspectives. So K-5 population, as you can see, is the same. Then I took out Barrows because those students will continue to go there through the lottery process. So I subtracted the students from Barrows attending for right now. Then what you see here is in 15-16, the 4 buildings actually only have 1,337 students in them compared to the 1,500 plus in 2012-13. And this past year, you can see we're now 300 students smaller in the same 4 buildings that could house 1,554 students. So by that logic, it presents us that we should at least minimally entertain the idea that we know that our 4 buildings here, once upon a time, were housing 300 more students. So we know that if one of those were to be reduced, the potential exists where we could hold 1,240 students at 3 of our buildings.
Okay, I just want to say that before, when we started this study with Fryer, before we did the high school renovation, we did the master facilities plan. The buildings were overcrowded in 12-13.
Yes. So
I don't want anybody to think that those numbers are what we should be returning to. Those were overcrowded numbers. Students were not being served as they should have been. They were having specials in what used to be showers and coat closets and stuff like that. I want to make sure that nobody thinks that because we had 511 of them at North Windham, 8 years ago, that's a good idea. That's a good number to shoot for. Possibly more students than we have now, but 511 was too many.
Okay. And can I ask this, Tracy, since
Yeah.
you're like,
I'm old and I've been doing this for too long, yes.
No. At Natchog and Sweeney and Windham Center, were those schools also considered overcrowded at the time by the town?
Sweeney was by the town according to the amount of square footage, blah, 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 blah. I have the books here on my bookshelf. I didn't see this slide before just now, so I haven't had the chance to go and look at it. But I'm taking a screenshot of it, and I'm going to take a look and just look at what the recommended sizes were according to state reimbursement and stuff like that. Those are in the facility master plan books that I have here. I just have to go through each of them to see where each school sits.
Okay.
And Janet should have a copy of those as well. But I'll do it and let you know.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay, so those are really the 3 initial slides we wanted to share. And then I know Tracy and I have some other information as we continue this conversation, but that's what we, at least to start the conversation through this committee, we wanted to at least share that. And obviously, the reason we want to start here is to get a sense of history and context. That's why I presented the slides like this, so that we could start having these potential discussions.
And each of the things that were on my initial slide, each of these bullets is an enormous amount of work that comes behind it. So
Oh, yeah.
we plan to have something to produce for the board for the retreat, which I know we'll be setting the date soon. I think we have a meeting next week where we're going to set that actual date, and we'll bring the details. But we would love to hear what you have to offer, Tracy, on the master plan. I think there's a copy here in this office. At least I've been told there is. So, you know, we can merge, you know, all the information together and figure out where we end up.
I have a copy on my bookcase, so anytime you need me to look something up, if I'm home, I can pull it up in a couple minutes because I kept a copy of it here. And Bob Roach from Fryer is the one that did that initial study for us. You know, it was supposed to be a 10-year facilities master plan. We're still working on phase 1, which was the high school, which was originally the back phase. Originally, we were supposed to add on to Sweeney. This was supposed to be our first project, and close Natchog and move all those copies into one. No, Mary, it wasn't ever digital because the district at the time didn't have the ability to support it digitally. But now they may. I'm sure they do by now. Brendan's done a lot of upgrades. He had just started right around then. So, or he wasn't in charge or something. But now we may have the opportunity to do it digitally. I can check with Bob when I speak to him next. But so there are 9 books. There's one executive summary, and then there's one for each of the schools, including when they were at Kramer for ECC, I believe. So I can go through and look for those things if there's things for individual buildings. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2012.
And that's another, you just mentioned ECC, which is another really important point, because the High School Renovate is New project moves that entire school into the high school, which frees up an entire wing in the middle school, which offers you the opportunity to shift some kids around. Like the middle school was originally built as a 5 through 8 school. So there's another potential option of the shifting of students around within the existing building. So there's a lot that we have to dig into to get there, but we're basically at the board retreat hoping to provide the board with as much information as possible, and you know, recommendations for you all to mull over and decide which way we should go.
I think giving us the information probably at the retreat, which Lynn had said was probably going to be in October, and then maybe putting it as a workshop meeting for November or December or something like that. That way when budget season really hits, we have, this is our plan, this is what it's going to cost to start closing a building, moving students over, changing populations. And we have to be careful that we don't do this too soon, because if we do need swing space somewhere for something, special ed program, autistic program, a small, you know, group of the high school students or something like that, we have to make sure we don't leave ourselves with absolutely no swing space either, because then we have to rent or do something different. And with this COVID going on, we don't want to, you know, close too much of our space down right away until we figure out what's going on there. But I think, you know, planning for it and letting the Board of Finance know that this is what closing a school costs, this is what it'll save, those are important things as well. I don't know if Tyler disagrees with me on that part.
No, I don't disagree with you. Like I said, the more information we all have, Board of Ed, Board of Finance, the better informed we can make on decisions. So it's going to cost us too much to close a school, but on the same time, it's going to cost a bunch of money to renovate it. Like we have to come to a good conclusion, and the only way to do that is to work together. And that's, you know, that's why, you know, you guys have been inviting our board members to your meetings. We're doing that. It's vital important, more now than ever, that we just continue to communicate. And I don't disagree. And I was on this board as the vice chairman. I would come to these meetings with Paul Colliers and you, Tracy. And I know that there was talk about all these different plans, and then you know, the thought was Companeros being its own, you know, kind of having its own school for all those kids together. And you know, all those kids in North Windham, a lot of them are the Companeros kids too, and you know, and they suffer, I think, a little bit too. So it's really just having these conversations, getting the information out there, and coming to good decisions that both boards agree to, so that we're not fighting over budget monies, because we know it all. We know what it all is, and we can come to a conclusion, and everyone's happy.
Excellent.
Well, mostly everyone's happy. Not everyone's always happy.
I saw Slambert responded to Dr. Galucci about was it grade 5 the first year? And the best answer I can give you is I think so, because aside from the many books behind Ms. Lambert, I asked my historian, Angela Kiss, this morning on the way into work, and then she was telling me she said don't quote her, but she thought that the 5th graders were moved back right before Barrow started. So she
Right.
thought 12, 13, and then we just never reconnected today. So I'll make sure I have the answer for you. But that's what I think the answer is. I think it is 12, 13.
All right, so more to come at the board retreat. I don't know if you have anything specific you want me to look into, or?
No, probably breaking those school numbers down by grade level, so we see what moving 5th grade back to the middle school looks like. There was a data-driven reason, and I know Mary doesn't agree with it, and that's fine. It was a different board then too. We can look at what the numbers mean, because when they were taking the CMTs, there was a huge drop-off between 4th grade and 5th grade, and we were thinking maybe our students aren't mature enough, maybe they're not ready, so we put them back in the elementary schools. That's what drove it. Not everybody agreed with it, and I understand that. But it was an experimental thing. Like, let's see what happens if we keep them in the elementaries for another year, and if their scores change, if they increase, if they decrease, if the drop-off happens at 6th grade, you know, all of those kind of things. And then CMT changed, so all of our metrics for measuring that changed at the same time. If we think we can put them back, it can be an experiment we can try for a few years too, but it's going to drive a lot of what we do with our next buildings, and that's part of what closing a building is going to help drive too. If we, you know, close a building and have to add on to another building or do major renovations, we have to start talking about that now before we move students into it, because then, like I said before, we have no swing space. We narrow our options at that point. So I just want to make sure that we're not doing something like, all right, we're going to move all the kids, you know, from Natchog into 3 different buildings, and then, oh wait, North Windham can't hold it. I'm just throwing something out there. North Windham can't hold it because of their HVAC or something like that, and then we've got to reconfigure things. So it's got to be like a whole systemic look that we take, rather than just a knee-jerk reaction to save some money. And I think Tyler can understand that. If we need to renovate a school before we move students into it, that's step 1. Moving the students out of Natchog, Sweeney, wherever we decide, would be step 2. I don't know if that makes sense or just to me.
It does. No, it makes sense. And
Okay.
actually, one of the districts I worked in before I came to Windham was Bloomfield, and they had a middle school that was grades 5 through 8. And what they decided to do was to actually split the middle school into basically 2 schools within one campus. They had the 5-6 side and the 7-8 side, because they did determine that the needs, and I think everyone understands this, that there's a very different set of developmental needs of a 5th and 6th grader versus a 7th and 8th grader. And so they literally had 2 schools on one campus, and that's how they ran their 5 through 8 school. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different configurations, but I just wanted to bring up the point that the building was designed 5 through 8. It was designed to hold a lot more students, the middle school, than it currently is. So there's that option.
Well, the way the middle school was designed with those 4 quadrants, it was 5 and 6, 7th and 8th.
Right.
And then we started some looping, and that moved things around, and then the CMT scores were dropping off, so we said, let's try this. So yeah, that's kind of how that kind of happened. So
Yep.
That's how it was designed. The bottom floor, 5th and 6th, top floor, 7th and 8th. So.
Yep. All right. So much more to come on that.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody has questions on? Paula? Tyler? Dawn, do you have anything to add? Dawn?
It's actually on a little, if I could just jump subjects. I just wanted to, because I was just thinking, so I just wanted to report too that because I know I've been talking about it since I came on board, the middle school restrooms. So we have brand new partitions, so we don't have rusty bent ones anymore. And we have new sinks with faucets that work. And I guess it couldn't come in a better time, I guess, right now, right? That we have working.
They can wash their hands. Thank you.
Yes. So that was like, I guess that was like one really good timing on something. So
That's awesome.
that's completed. I wanted to do more in there, but the 2 most important parts of the restrooms are taken care of. So
Excellent.
happy about that.
Mary, do you have anything else to add?
She said no in the chat room.
Oh, okay. I just thought.
Yeah.
All right, you're good? Mr. Weathers? Okay. Anything else? Okay. I will adjourn this meeting at 6:17 and see you all at 7 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Tyler. Thank you, everybody.